Hi there. Another book in the series on non-fiction, and this book was written by Al Murray. Now, Al Murray is noted for being a comedian. He's one of my favourites, and the pub landlord is absolutely hilarious. But that is actually a character he plays, and he himself is not like that at all. And he studied history at university, and he speaks German and so on. And some of the other work he's done reflects this. You know, he did a cultural series about Germany, for example. Well, the book we're going to talk about, Watching War Films with My Dad, is brilliant, and it very much resonated with me because I do enjoy watching war movies. So his father served in the airborne forces, and so when they watched a war movie together, his dad was always very critical of any mistakes that were made, whether it was uniforms, whether it was weapons, or whether it was tactics or whatever. So a lot of films are just made for entertainment, and they don't really purport to be anything other than fiction and entertainment. For example, Where Eagles Dare. Really good entertainment, but it wasn't based on a real wartime exploit, and it was pretty inaccurate. And in fact, one of the cast, Darren Nesbitt, has done an interview where he talks about being in that movie. It's hilarious. I'll put a link to it. And he seemed to know quite a bit about history, and he kept pointing out to the director such things as the Gestapo weren't wearing black uniforms and so on. I guess the clue is in the name Geheim, secret. They were secret, and the fact that they didn't have helicopters during World War II, which the director actually found surprising. So we can forgive films like that, but then also Kelly's Heroes, for example. Kelly, another fictional story, entertainment, and anachronisms such as the character Oddball and so on. I actually thought they got some stuff pretty spot on. For a long time I thought they actually used 3 real Tiger tanks, but I found out later they had mocked them up over a T-34 chassis. But it was pretty well done, but pure entertainment. But then you have films that supposed to be real stories. For example, The Battle of the Bulge. Now, I went to see that with my dad on the Abbey Cinema in Liverpool, which was the biggest screen that there was, and it showed all this Vista Vision and stuff actually popped out the screen at you. It was almost you were in there. And I went to see the Battle of the Bulge, and I really enjoyed it, because I was still a schoolboy. But later on, because it's on TV regularly and you see it, and you realise, or you wonder, why are the Germans using American tanks? American tanks that weren't produced till after World War II. So things like that, and Hollywood really just take liberties. As Jeremy Clarkson puts it, the typical plot is the bad guy is Sir Winston Hitler, and a typical of that would be U-571, which was based on something that actually happened, which was going after the codes and the Enigma machine from a German U-boat. That did happen, but it happened before America was even in the war. But Hollywood just ignored that and made it an American operation. Anyway, in the book, one of the films that he aims at is the Battle of Britain. Now, funny enough, it was on the other day, and I watched a big chunk of it. I really enjoy it. I think it's a really well done film. But Al Murray points out that the Messerschmitt 109s in the film were actually from the Spanish Air Force, who bought them after the war from Germany. Fair enough, but they had re-equipped them with Merlin engines, so you had the sound of the very, very typical sound of the Merlin engine on a Messerschmitt, which kind of grated on Al Murray. And also the Spitfires are the wrong type. That later in the war, they weren't the ones that were used in the Battle of Britain. I actually can forgive stuff like that because they did the best job they could. They got lots and lots of German bombers, the Spitfires, the Hurricanes, and the Me-109s, because they were using real aircraft. They didn't use computer graphics. And some of the scenes, particularly were the view from the German bomber fleet as it's flying up the Thames estuary in daytime, and London comes into view, and it's the first big raid on London. It's absolutely spellbinding. Very, very well done. But I do understand where Al Murray is coming from, because I'm similarly critical of films that have firearms in. You know, and somebody fires 7 shots from a revolver, or 18 shots from a Colt 45 or something. I used to be very critical of that kind of thing until I found out a little bit more about filmmaking. Terry was on the set of Predator with Arnold. Arnold was making Predator, and he said there was a scene where Arnold runs into a building and shoots a load of the local troops, and he said the troops were actually a mile away from where Arnold was. Arnold was facing a camera, running up to it and firing, and in a different location, a different crew were filming these guys being shot, the reaction to it. Well, when you figure in the multiple shots that they would do from different camera angles, different takes, and all goes into the editing, and then the editor, who probably doesn't know anything about firearms, puts it together, and that's why you get things like that. It's only people like Michael Mann, who are absolutely meticulous on things like firearms, who would get it right. So the Al Murray in the book also, he talks about a TV series he did, D-Day to Berlin, which was a delight, where he drove a Jeep from the beaches of Normandy to Berlin, and on the way talked about what had happened and interviewed people and so on, and it was really, really well done. The part he talks about most in the book is about Arnhem and the decisions they had to make are what to leave out, because it's it's quite a short TV program, and it was a long battle, and that was quite interesting. And then another conversation they had amongst themselves was they were going to visit the Führer bunker in Berlin, where Hitler committed suicide, and they were going to meet one of the guys who worked in there. He was Hitler's secretary, and they wondered whether to shake hands with this old Nazi who had undoubtedly shook Hitler's hand. So it was really interesting in the book. He also talks quite a bit about Monty and what a controversial figure he was, both as a military leader and a member of an allied effort. So he's not as critical of Monty as some, but he does bring out some of the home truths. And he also has quite a bit in about the subject of history, how the teaching of history, or the way history is written about, has changed, and there's kind of schools of history almost. I found that interesting too, and it's where quite a bit of the revisionism comes from. Terrific book, written with the humour you would expect from Al Murray. It struck chords with me. I'm a big fan of movies, particularly war movies, so it had a lot for me to enjoy.